It's so powerful. And it's all encoded inside and just waiting to be shared. And the more we hide, the more disservice that is to the world. Because this is a shared life experience. What would our life be without our connections and being with the trees and the plants and the animals and the people that we adore and our families and a chosen family and the answer is it's nothing without that.
Yeah, so what is the subject today? It's something you mentioned. It was femininity in practice, or was it emotions, caring about emotions? Do you recall exactly how you were thinking about it when you brought it up?
Well, don't try and pin it on me. You started it. It was your newsletter where you were talking about being on a Zen meditation retreat.
Yeah.
And you were referring to people talking about their feelings and that kind of thing. And you were, not going into it too much because it just kicks off a shitstorm with people, and it's just, it's hard to talk about because people get emotional about it, funnily enough. And it's men and women who get emotional about it and stuff. However, it's something I've been thinking about for a while and noticed for ages, and no one's really talking about it. And there's a big trend in all mind-body practices and spiritual practices and all those things. And it's a certain way of looking at things, a certain way of using your brain, a certain way of thinking that it's just taken for granted in those practices, and it's not always helpful. So, to summarize, it's basically obsessing over feelings, and it's a more feminine way of thinking. And I don't mean that in a necessarily negative way. I just mean I'm just describing it. It's if you go to a gym and you're in the weights room and you see what the guys are doing, no one would dispute that's a masculine way of thinking and doing things. More masculine. Obviously, women do it too, but it's a more masculine way of approaching things. If you go to any of these mind-body practices and retreats and all these things, that's not the type of guys you see there typically. You usually see a lot more women, and you usually see a certain type of guy, many of them, not all, obviously, present company excluded. It's just a more feminine culture, and there's problems with that because it's too far that way. I think you imagine a sliding scale between a masculine approach to mind-body practices and a feminine approach, so this scale is way too far over to the feminine side, but people don't realize that there's a scale. They think that that's what it is. So really it breeds a culture of obsessing over the emotions, it's all about feels. It's the approach to themselves is like this. So like one of the female evolutionary strategies, let's call it, for psychology, in their like evolutionary psychology, is that they try and bring people together and have approval of the group and those type of things for survival, and empathizing with other people and trying to have conformity with people and get everybody to agree and get along with each other. Obviously, these are essential things you need in an ancient tribe or whatever to survive. It's not a bad thing, but when that kind of approach is, if you compare it to like the masculine approach of like hunting and building things and fighting, those things, that approach, if you take that to mind-body practices, what they do is they try to have conformity and approval and agreement amongst themselves. So every little sensation and emotion needs treated with respect and included, and it means something, and it's important, and they're all equally important, and it's all like living in the now, it's in the moment. And all of these things are just taken for granted as part of mind-body culture, but actually it doesn't need to be. There's a bias towards unreason, and it's like, I'm going to be controversial now, it's prey behavior rather than predator behavior. And in the terms of, it's like sitting around waiting for things to happen, try to be aware of as many things around you as possible. So, this was necessary to survive. And women aren't as big and strong as men, so it's harder for them to survive. So they need different strategies in general than men needed. And so if you have a mind-body practice, you have someone sitting there and they're trying to be aware of everything happening around them, and everything's important. Every little thing is equally important. Live in the moment. Don't think of the future. Don't think. Just let it happen. All those things that are just assumptions and fashions in the mind-body culture. And compare that to the predator, who has a plan, he has a goal, he's thinking about things that are happening through time, not just in the moment. He's thinking systematically about where things are, visuospatially, all of those things, much more than just feeling in the moment and trying to have empathy for other people around you, which are necessary in a group of people with men and women. But the whole of the culture of mind-body practices happens to be the feminine side and not the male side. So, somebody asked on Twitter recently, how come there's not much crossover between meditation and people lifting weights? This is one of the reasons. It's like people are more masculine mindset are going to be drawn to weights and MMA and all those things. And people with a more feminine mindset are going to be go to these things where you're having empathy with yourself, each emotion, each sensation. It's also, everything's valuable and that kind of thing. And then worrying about trauma and all these details, where the masculine way would just be, what's the plan you're trying to do, and do it anyway, no matter how you happen to feel. So one thing I've found a lot in the posture work is that people, if you obsess over each little feeling and sensation feeling right, you won't get anywhere with it. You have to have a plan about the coordination you want and do it anyway, no matter how it feels. So it's not quite like no pain, no gain. It's not like that. It's more making a decision and sticking to it, even if it feels bad. But if you have the more feminine approach to mind-body practices, you won't do that, because you're looking for the feelings that feel right and feel better and feel safe. Or you're just obsessed with all these different sensations and new experiences, which a lot of them are, especially on Twitter. You'll see it's all like, they're obsessed with like all these different experiences and what they all mean and stuff. But they don't mean anything mostly. They're just a guy sitting in his room fantasizing about what this all means, and I'm having higher feelings about this, that, or the other thing. But they're not actually going out in the world and doing things. So again, you're imagining a predator hiding in a hole, or like hiding amongst other. You're imagining a prey hiding among other prey. So like the idea with zebras with stripes, so that they look like they can't be isolated and amongst all the other zebras. Compare that to a predator who is going out and doing something. So it's like a sort of deep human animal. Two different strategies that the human animal has. One's more male, one's more female, but there obviously there's crossover. And it's playing out in mind-body practices. And I haven't heard anyone mention that or notice that before. It's not beneficial to a lot of people. It's putting a lot of men off getting involved in those things. And it's just a wrong assumption as far as I'm concerned. And it's actually bad for culture, civilization as a whole, because they're training people to be less responsible for themselves, to have less agency, to have less conscious control over themselves, because you're just let it all happen, man. Just it'll all happen by itself better. Don't interfere. The word control is a dirty word for them. You're not to use the word control, which is absurd, because you have to, picking up a glass of water requires control. Making tools requires conscious control over yourself when you make them. So you have all these things that I've been in the back of my mind for a long time. And it was when you put your newsletter out, I thought, no, let's talk about this now, even though it's going to annoy people.
Yeah, it will annoy people. It does annoy people, actually, a lot, as I discover regularly when I make fun of them. But yeah, just I suppose as a quick background, that newsletter, for people who don't or intelligently don't read my newsletter, it was about a retreat that I went to, and a number of things happened at that retreat. But I would say the gender mix was. Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, I've muted you, but people on here can hear me, if that makes sense. So I was just saying how that newsletter, for people who don't read my newsletter wisely, was about a session, a Zen meditation retreat that I went to. And I go to maybe 3 or 4 of these a year. Usually, something like that, and they tend to run for anything from 6 to 8 days. So it's a silent retreat with intensive sitting practice. You sit anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a day, and everything else you're meant to do mindfully. There's no reading, no talking, no theorizing or anything like that, unless you have a talking session with one of the masters or the attending master, who does what's called a dokusan, which in the tradition is, if you have a question, you formulate it and you can go and talk to him about it. But anyway, the gender balance at this one was somewhat skewed, and it was skewed towards the fairer sex, which I believe they shouldn't really be called the fairer sex in my experience of life. But anyway, it's a different matter. So basically, a lot of the people, as Kevin was saying, that go to these things tend to be very, how would you say, emotionally aware, growing internally, growing emotionally, overcoming, past traumas, all the cliches that you hear these days with not just spiritual people, but you hear with people everywhere. So all around the world, we have this focus on emotions and various other things. And the Zen project, like many of these projects, fundamentally don't really care about emotions. The emotions are, in the tradition, considered phenomenon like anything else. So if you are doing Zazen, there's no particular need to be focused on emotions during the practice. And if difficult emotions come up, which invariably they will, if you're sitting there for so long, it's, you're advised to basically ignore it. Just let it come up and disappear. But anyway, the master there, who was I love him. He's a great guy, but he's a bit of a curmudgeon. He's like this older gentleman, very Australian, rides motorbikes, has a kind of short fuse. In fact, he's the least Zen master I've ever met. And we got talking, and I'm also cantankerous and easily annoyed by sentimentalities. And I don't recall how it all came up, but it was essentially, I went down to ask about some other matters. And, it was a flippant comment where he mentioned that, this is a relief that you're coming to me with this because, I don't want to, he didn't say this explicitly, but this is what he indicated, that there were people who were visiting him with all manner of psychodrama and, how can I love more? How can I express more love in the world? And, all this kind of stuff. So anyway, we kind of kicked it off, but this was the inception of that article. I wrote about how in many of these practices that there is an emphasis that people have on their head on emotions in particular, feelings and emotions, and how important they are to everything. And how through the retreat, he made several speeches, after a block of sitting, where sometimes the master will address the people there. And he said that, if you're experiencing difficult emotions, feelings, whatever it is, just try to recognize them like you're meant to do with thinking or anything else that arises. You want to be an observer of these things. Anyway, so that was the inception, and apparently it continued right through to the end. I had a chat with him afterwards, but I won't say too much about that because I don't want to incriminates him, and I am making it sound a bit more like, he was vocal about it than what he was. But this is basically what I inferred to be the case. So I agree with you. And I also think that there is a kind of genealogy with the modern obsession with emotions. And it's there's probably a lot to it. But I do think that in this genealogy, it's worth considering where all this came from, this kind of idea of emotions and this therapy culture. And effectively, what I think it comes from is this idea of repression and emotional repression, and that society has repressed our emotions and has repressed our feelings and our ability to feel things emotionally. I think I do think the way these people think about it is fundamentally incorrect. And I think that it would probably be fair to say that in the traditions, so in meditation tradition, yogic traditions, whatever it is, as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, and obviously there are differences subtly in the way that these traditions handle things, but there's no explicit reference to emotional primacy or the idea that emotions are repressed, and emotions, because they're repressed, they need to be, quote unquote, released in some way by the practice. And I think in the West, we had a run of intellectuals and psychoanalysts in particular were probably responsible for this. There were some of them that went down this path. And it is a kind of Rousseauan path when I think about it, right? It's this overriding idea that the human being is this lovely, wonderful creature, and nasty society comes along and represses or makes him mean, and all these emotions get repressed, and he learns to be this big bad guy, and he goes around hurting everyone. And this misconstrual of human nature kind of runs through everything in the West, I think. And I think that whoever these psychoanalysts were, and I think there were probably a few of them who were responsible for this idea. For example, for sure, Reich was. For sure, he did speak about emotional repression. There were some elements of Freudianism, not really. And then there were a few others, I think. And then when you got into the 60s and 70s in particular, a lot of the neo-Reichians and neo-Freudians and, quote, psychotherapists in general really pushed this idea of repression and emotional repression. And that the purpose of these kinds of bodywork things or whatever else, this whole scope of physiological work, it therefore became this thing where you needed to release the emotions that have been repressed. And it could have been, what is it, rebirthing, that weird one, how everyone cries and imagines that they're being born again, or, those therapies, how they just yell and scream. It was this overriding idea, again, that was just running underneath everything and giving everything its flavor. I would say that, fairly obviously, if you're into meditation or yoga and being spiritually enlightened and all this different stuff that people in this cultural frame often speak about, then a lot of these ideas kind of made their way into spiritual practices, for lack of a better word, and Buddhism and yoga. When you look at the traditions, they actually say very little about it, and most of what they say about it is that it's a negative side effect. It's a side effect of the practice that you're doing that just comes up, and you shouldn't go with it or fall into it, or there are various other ways that they speak about it. But I just thought it was worth considering where it came from. And I do think it's a distinctly Western post-60s phenomenon. And that's where I think it probably came from. I love your points about the feminine way of processing the world as well. For sure, that's absolutely true. It's got something to do with it. And I think what we're experiencing now is this unholy maelstrom of therapy culture, misnomers from the 60s, and the psychoanalysts and various other people, and some of the ickier elements of the traditions themselves, and they're just they're being stirred up together in this rather saccharine, disgusting brew that we need to put up with. And I think it's worth considering where it came from, and that a lot of it is culturally dependent, and a lot of it is actually also incorrect. And we know now with neuroscience and various other things that the way that emotions are not the way that this therapy culture and this spiritual culture are promoting them to be. The story is a lot more complex and a lot different to what they're saying. And also, it's a subtle difference, but emotions are not so much repressed. They are rerouted, or how would you say, perverted or channeled in the wrong direction. There are a number of ways that we get out of touch with that stuff, or that we don't learn how to handle that stuff. But maybe we can talk about that a bit later. I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I think it is worth considering the genealogy, I suppose, of where these assumptions about emotions come from.
Yeah, a load of it goes back to Rousseau, like you say. It's the noble savage idea that there was once. It's kind of like the lost paradise idea as well. There was once everything was perfect, and then society and all those things messed everybody up and made it wrong. So if you somehow get back to the deepest, most primitive levels, it'll all fix itself. It's a huge assumption. So it's like, if you like with posture specifically, because that's something I used to believe, but changed my mind through experiments and seeing it, experiences, is that I used to think if you just get out of your own way and you release all the tension, your body will just automatically find the correct posture and get back to it. It's just an assumption that wasn't explicit. It wasn't even thought about. It was so obvious. Everyone thought that. So you just release all the tensions that you've built up over life, and you'll just get back to the correct, natural way, and your body knows what to do, and it'll do it by itself. Loads of people believe variations of this in mind-body practices and other things. And when you actually do that, you don't get back to good posture. You just become bad posture in a different way. But you might feel good in each of the little sensations if you're measuring it by that. But then I start measuring it by video and geometrical reasoning about positions and mechanical understandings. And you realize that the way, if you just let your body do it by itself, it won't do it in a good way. And I've seen this with many people. So a lot of the emotional stuff in the approaches to therapy and that now, and mind-body practices is based on the idea if you just get down to the primitive emotions and feelings and get them out of you, everything will be good and you'll be back to the real natural self. Not that everyone says that explicitly, but that seems to be the assumption by a lot of people. It's bollocks. It just doesn't work like that. You just, you can scream into a pillow all you want. It's not going to fix. If you're emotionally unbalanced or upset or unhappy because you don't have a mate, or if you don't have safety, basic safety and resources, or if you don't, or if you've bad things have happened recently or whatever, you need to do something about that. There's things you have to do when you have those emotional, like the deep emotional systems, like we've talked about Panksepp and Mark Solms talks about as well. Actions are required for those emotional systems. If you're angry, it's making you do something to get rid of the thing that's annoying you. If you're lustful, well, self-explanatory. If you're caring, you want to help and make better the people around you. These are like emotional systems that require you to do something. So no amount of just seeing and feeling your emotions more and more deeply will solve those problems for you. So a mistake people make, not just mind-body practices, but self-help in general, is like an example would be the guys who think that you have to sit and get yourself feeling right about women before you can speak to women and go out and find a mate. They're unhappy because they don't have a mate, because it's just a natural instinct. You want that. So they try to make themselves feel good and right and confident about it first before they go and do anything about it. But that's not how you feel confident and good. You feel confident and good in reaction to having done the thing. So they have it backwards. This is exactly like it's in body-based stuff as well. You feel better long-term by adjusting your body in such a coordination that it's more mechanically appropriate, has better posture. Your postural system is better maintained. Then the good feelings come after. If you try and good feeling your way to the better posture, it doesn't work, because the new movements are going to feel strange, and when things feel strange, they feel bad to people. It's just like, again, that goes back. It's more the kind of more feminine approach. Is they're trying to make things okay all the time. They're trying to, they don't, and when they're, some of the time, they're trying to make everybody get on and make everything okay. So they're applying that to themselves too. But sometimes you need conflict. Sometimes to actually go out and do something and have a go to try and accomplish a goal. It's useful to have conflict. It's useful to have an enemy. It's useful to have these things where things aren't getting on. They're antagonistic to each other. And obviously this is more a masculine trait. There's good and bad versions of all these. It's not like, I'm not saying it's good and bad. I'm just saying these are different approaches. We're wired biologically, a lot of this, and it's different between men and women, whether people like it or not. It just is. Although obviously some women are more like this, more like the masculine approach, and some men are more like the feminine approach. I know several women who are more of the masculine approach and have all these functional great traits that we associate with, high functioning, successful male behaviours, stereotypically.
Just quickly, that'd be like the average Scottish mother would be quite masculine, I would imagine, she's bludgeoning you over the head with a rolling pin for misbehaving and stuff. Or...
happens all the time. Yeah, that's where I learned this stuff. So it's not like, and then obviously men, if you go to any kind of mind-body retreat or something like that, you'll find very feminine type of men, and it's all about the feelings and that. Some of them are just predators who are trying to pick up women, and they're just at it. But a lot of them are not. They're just that's just how they process things. And the whole
I'm
idea,
the predator. Just to make that clear, I'm definitely the predator in that situation.
If you're at a retreat and you don't know who the predator is, it's you. Simple as that. So I'll tell a story about the kind of difference between male and female approach to things, which is actually relevant to this, is if you go shopping with a woman and she says she wants to go, let's say it's clothes shopping, right? And she wants to buy some particular thing and she wants you to go with her, and because you're going somewhere else after or whatever. So you end up getting roped into going to the mall. This is a recent experience. So they have a specific thing they need for a specific event. So it's like there's a problem that needs solved. So I get to the door of the shop and I just start marching through, knocking over old ladies, just like in a direct line straight through to get to the place as fast as possible to buy the thing that we've already decided she needs and then to leave. That's not how a woman shops, obviously. So they're like in the moment now, and then this thing reminds them of these other things, and then they're like, it's completely indirect all over the place to get to that thing. And they find it offensive, and like you're not with them, you're not paying attention. They find it annoying that you want to just immediately go and get the thing. But that's masculine brain. That's like predator focused action instinct, one thing at a time. Whereas a woman is more likely to be thinking of many things at a time. The old joke about men can't multitask that women say. And it's true, because women are thinking about all different things at once. So they see like tops over here, and then it thinks of this other event that they need this thing for, and then this would go with this, and that would go with this. But I'm like, we could be in and out here in 1 minute if we just go now, which obviously doesn't happen. So you can imagine that now as like ancient ancestors, where there's like the guy's brain has been evolved for hunting and going out and doing the hunting thing with other guys, and the women's for wandering around, gathering with the other women and making sure everybody gets on, caring for having to be aware of all the children and the other women and looking out for predators, attacking them and dangers and that all the time. Has to be aware of many things in the moment right now while empathizing with other people. That's not what is useful for a male who's out hunting in a pack with a pack of men out hunting. That's not useful. It's certainly not useful to be empathizing with the deer. Like beforehand, they have like ceremonies sometimes after when they kill the animals and stuff. But before, if you're empathizing, you're going to starve. So you have to be, and you have to have a goal, and you're working towards a goal. The way of speaking with men is different because it's goal orientated, because it's comes from mostly, a lot of it comes from this group hunting. Women, it's not. The speaking is more connecting with people and stuff like that when they're getting on. And then obviously when there's a war, when there's like a aggressive behavior, the males, well, everyone knows what males do when they're aggressive, and it can get out of hand, and you get dicks who immediately jump to the violence rather than it being the last thing they try, whereas the women's version, being smaller and less strong and good at fighting in general, is they go to war verbally, and they gossip about people, and they exclude people, and they, cancel culture. It's basically feminine behavior when they're trying to compete with people. So men competing will fight each other straight on directly. They'll be aggressive to each other. Like the more masculine a man is, the more it will display something like that. Duel culture, like challenging people to a duel. Whereas for women, it's going to be gossiping and shaming and all those things to other people. So it's just as warlike. It's just a different strategy. So that as well, you see playing out in mind-body practices. You see them gossiping about the guy. You hear of all these stories about the bad guru who misbehaves and stuff like that. So I always just believe them at face value, because a lot of these people are hypocrites, and a lot of them, they might be attained in some kind of meditation tradition, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily good behavior, a good person as well in normal life. We've talked about that in other podcasts.
Yeah, the women always fall for it too, I might add.
The women fall for it, and then they react against it. And then the ones who wanted the guy's attention then make up stories or exaggerate stories about the guy. And then the guy gets sacked or gets accused of these things. And then now I'm more skeptical about a lot of those stories, about whether they really were. It's often the guy's accused of bullying. He's often accused of manipulating, making people do things and stuff like that. But if you think about it, some of that is just like normal behavior. If you're running a company, you're just getting people to do things, and you're making a behavior like, doesn't need to be the level of like in military or something like that. But it could just be getting people to do things. But the culture of mind-body practice is very feminine, and everything is to be loved, and everything is to be equal, and everything is equally valuable. Each motion, each feeling, you have to be passive, let things happen, stop controlling things. So they're obviously going to react against the guy who's trying to make things happen. Some of that, I'm more skeptical about some of those stories I've heard now, although there's definitely bad people who've done bad things for definite. So what you said about the traditions, it wasn't really like that motion. It wasn't really emotional. There wasn't the emphasis on emotions in the traditions. Well, if you think about it, the traditions were written down by men, almost always. And these men who wrote these things down were systematizers, So they're not emotional types of people. And what did they do? They used to have the monks. The men would go to train in one place, and the women in a different place. And they used to do it with schools. Obviously, you would have the male and female separation of schools because of different brains, different learning types, learning strategies. So they learn better separately, whether people like it or not. So a lot of the mind-body stuff used to be separated, the men and women, both the Christian stuff and also the Islamic stuff and the Buddhists and whatever. But now, what do Westerners do? It's mixed for Westerners. You have men and women mixed. So it's already having an effect before anything is even said or done. And it's automatically going to move more towards the feminine than to the masculine when it's a mixed group like that.
It totally does change it. It's funny you should mention that.
100% it has to.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Say one last thing. I have one theory, is that if in the West, if mind-body practices and meditation retreats and all those things were, I know this is illegal in most places now, but if they were segregated between men and women, there would be a lot more, quote, enlightened people in the West than there are now. Because it's a distraction for men. It's like in the obvious sense, but also it changes the dynamics. It becomes the more focused on the emotional stuff. And everyone knows men act differently. As soon as one woman turns up in the group, all of the men act differently. And she doesn't even need to be hot. They already act differently. So I think it's actually stopping a lot of people from waking up in their, or however their tradition talks about it, because of the mix of men and female, men and female, men and women.
And
I've never heard anyone say that before. So, like, maybe people have thought it and they just don't see it. So I really would like to hear from someone who has experience of this or some stories to tell. It'd be fun.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, you are absolutely 100% right. And I think I put in that article, like, I forget what it was about. It was, women are struggling with their emotions, while they're wearing a pair of fucking yoga pants, and I'm sitting there trying not to think about, you know what I mean? It's just totally fucking inappropriate, actually. And
yes, and they're saying to you should just not think those things and feel those
don't
things.
Think about fucking the 23-year-old yoga girl,
I couldn't possibly comment on those things, but it's, in a way, it's a lack of empathy for the man, from the man's point of view, and it comes down to brain. It comes down to brain differences. It's just whether people like it or not. That's just how men are wired, and there used to be all these systems and checks in place to control these things in order for you to be able to train and practice and to get somewhere in the practice. So I mean, like, what you do is, obviously, I just call it, I don't know how it is, I just call it samurai meditation. Your style of doing it, it's more emotional. Definitely at the masculine end of that spectrum, masculine style at the end of the spectrum. I'm hardly going to call samurais feminine, obviously. But the other side of it, you get all the let your feelings out and all that stuff. And I'm not saying there's not a place for those things in some situations for some people, but it's complete absurdity to think that those kind of systems are going to work equally for men as for women. They're just not. It's like they're bad for a lot of men. Men much more passive. I know a lot of more passive types gravitate towards these things in the first place, so there's selection bias, but still it makes you more passive. If you train yourself day in, day out to let things happen, to just watch, don't move, while also have a cognitive understanding of it, is that's the way life is for everything, on top of it, because there's the two things. There's doing the practice, which is really just mental tools for achieving goals, and then there's whether that's your philosophy of life all the time. And people kind of conflate the two a lot of the time. So the big one is just, let it happen. Don't think, just let it happen. Trust your feelings, trust your intuition. There's what intuition? I mean, your random built-in intuitions in a that come from, ancient humans, now inside a complex technical civilization. A lot of those built-in intuitions are useless and rubbish and dangerous. But if you train yourself and reason about things and practice and actually think, and you're doing experiments and learning things, your intuitions now might actually be quite good because your intuition's based on knowledge and experience. It's not the same thing as it being in there since you were born and I just need to get it out. I'll be creative or all this crap. And I'm saying this as someone who tried all these things, so I'm not just on the outside. I mean, I tried all these things for years. It just doesn't go anywhere. You feel great. You have all these higher feelings and all these things, and at the end of the day, it doesn't buy you a burger at McDonald's.
No, it certainly doesn't. It might buy you a soy vegan patty, though, maybe. But I think that I basically agree. Yeah, well, first of all, putting me in the same room as these fit young yoga hippie girls, I mean, yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. And the other thing is, I totally agree that if you, we've said this before. So when you have practice, the practice doesn't have anything particularly about it conceptually necessarily. So, for example, there's nothing about Zen that necessarily says that you need to have this grand overarching ideological framework built over the top of it. The experience in the practice confers certain things, and really the ideology that people put on top, including emotion ideology or repression ideology or whatever you want to call it. A lot of Buddhism is an ideology. which is going to get me in trouble. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the practice in terms of it being a tool, as you say, and the fact that you're using it to train yourself in some particular way, which is incidentally how I treat these things. But, the other thing I think is that when I was trying to frame this question in my head today, I was just kind of walking around thinking about it a bit. It's an interesting experience that when you have a question during a Zen retreat and you have to sit down and you're waiting for your turn with the Zen master, and you sit there and you're thinking about it, and the more you do this, the more you realize that probably your question was mostly a load of shit and you didn't really understand what you were asking about anyway. And very often you resolve your own problem by just sitting there and thinking about it and trying to be specific about it. And I kind of had that experience when I was thinking about, there's feminine ways you can interpret things and male ways and masculine and the feminine and the sun and the moon and all this stuff. What are emotions fundamentally? What are they? And I think it's worth maybe us thinking about that a little bit, because I don't really, I know what they are in terms of evolutionary science and neuroscience and stuff like that. But, there's a lot of different layers to what we call emotions, what we say that they are. And I don't think people have a very good idea of what that is. And I don't think they think about it much. So they just take a whole lot of words and terms and various other things, labels that they put on various phenomenon in their body, and they don't really think about it. Like, is that even a legitimate way to be thinking about what an emotion is? Is what I'm feeling what I think it is that I'm feeling? And what fundamentally struck me when I was talking to a lot of these people, and, I've had conversations with people like this before, I'm sure we all have, and there seemed to be an element almost of play acting, and the expression of the emotion and the sentimentality, you could say, it appeared to me, even though there was some sort of optical illusion of emotional whatever, it seemed to me very much to be a social contrivance, I would say. And it just, all this has got me thinking about, well, just going back to fundamental basics, neuroscientific and psychological basics, like what is an emotion, even what is a feeling, and how do we know what we're feeling is the label we're putting on it. And I think that you're right when you say, and Mark Soames, was talking about this too, that we have fundamental survival level emotions. So fundamental emotions that, as you say, need to be acted on, and that they're a part of the arousal system, which ensures the maintenance of homeostasis in the organism in an environment. So that's one level. And for sure, we want them, I think. And then he speaks about secondary emotions. So these are emotions kind of on top of that. And, they're similar and they offer feedback to the organism. And, some of them, but things start to get a little bit complex around about this level. It's mixes of different things. And it got me thinking about this idea that emotions, so you have the fundamental drive emotions, so survival emotions. And for example, then you have these kind of, we'll put it this way. So we, I think you would agree, cognitive animals, and we do think. And I guess what I'm saying is a lot of emotions are actually created by us fundamentally. So they're created, as you say, for social management. They're created just probably automatically because we don't really know what we're doing with our thinking and various other stuff. So as cognitive animals, there is a whole layer of sensory, emotional experience that is downstream of the way that we conceptualize and cognize about things in the environment. Have come around to thinking that 90% of everything that everyone always goes on about emotions and all this other stuff is basically stuff that they've just kind of conjured up with their cognition, with their thoughts, with their thought structures, with the ways that they conceptualize the world, that actually those third tier emotions are downstream of their thinking. And I think that a lot of them, mostly self-serving rubbish. And, you know, I think we see examples of this all the time, right? Like, for example, I'm not going to go into detail, but there are various ideologies in the world where people are led to believe that they are victims for the way they are in some way. And this colors their entire experience. So downstream of these fundamental beliefs, then you have this whole emotional world that gets made effectively, but first by a cognitive foundation or a cognitive, foundation. And they can have an entire emotional experience that bears absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to the reality of the world around them. But because it's an emotion, and because we ascribe such objectivity and virtue to emotions, they could go through their entire lives thinking that because I feel this way about this, that is the reality of the world around me, that this is based in objective fact in some way. And I don't think this is well understood. So for example, you could go on a whole emotional odyssey through all these things. So it could be Zen, or, you know, you could get into therapy, or you could do all these things. And if you fundamentally just maintain the same beliefs that's setting off this emotional regulation, this emotional feedback loop back into your cognitive experience. So it's feeding back, right? And it's cementing it. And because it feels like something, we're taking it to go, well, that's proof that it's real. I feel that way about it. It's a feeling in me. It's an emotion in me. So it must be real. It must be legitimate. And I hear this all the time. I've heard it with ex-girlfriends in particular, that they think, and I again think this is not necessarily fundamental to females, but it's what they've been taught as they grow up, is that their emotions are proof that their experience is valid. And, you know, they'll go around and bully everyone and just be generally horrible. But because their emotions are okay and they've been taught that their emotions are wonderful and objective and great, they never look at, okay, what are the cognitive assumptions as a cognitive creature? What are the assumptions, the conceptual assumptions that I'm making about the world that could be leading to this emotional experience, not the other way around? And I think it's the same, just going back to the retreat, it's the same with hippies, right? So hippies have the same thing, but to me, it just seems so surface level and insincere. It just seemed like what the fuck are you talking about? Like, yeah, okay, I'm a little bit autistic. I get that. But, you know, it's like, oh, you know, they got this little look of love and just everyone's softly spoken and, oh, isn't that, you know, it's lovely. Oh, did you have a good sit, you know? And I just find it to be just insincere, ridiculous, and just the result of a kind of ideology structure that people superimpose over the top of the world. And that I consider that fundamentally different to deep human drives. So hatred, you know, anger, hunger, you know, all these fundamental envy, all these fundamental human drives exist for me on a different level, a more fundamental level. But I guess it's just a long-winded way of me saying that a lot of the appeals to emotion and various ways that people talk about their emotions, I think they're very surface level, and I think that they're downstream of cognition. And I think that fundamentally they need to get back to what their ideas are about the world, or better yet, what their metaphysical beliefs that are sitting underneath, and how those things are leading to the way that they emote in general in their environment. So I don't know, maybe that was a little bit ranty, but you kind of see what I'm getting at. There are these different levels, I suppose you could say, right?
Yeah, well, there's like the emotional systems that are like completely unconscious. Your brain's just doing, that yuck concept talks about in effective neuroscience. And then the ones you're aware of, that you're like consciously aware of in the moment, they're like higher level versions of those. But you don't have access directly to the emotional system itself, which are, they have their own pathways, they have their own chemicals, they do their own things. You can physically see it. And you could easily, if you could test this with people and get into their heads, which I'm sure you could do eventually, sure you could do with enough money, the person could label the emotion that they're feeling, and then you could check and see if it really is that physical system has been activated at the same time. And then you could eventually start train the person to recognize which emotion they're actually experiencing at the time. But you still won't be experiencing the system directly. You'll be experiencing the sensation that goes with it. So, for example, everyone has a emotional system for play. All mammals have this drive to play. There's kids automatically play, lambs play, all like puppies play, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, practicing for later in life and other reasons, but it's like an emotional drive to do it. And when you do play, you don't experience play, you experience joy, social joy. You have fun. That's it. You have fun. We don't think about it, but really that's a specific emotion based on playing with other people. And for men, it's more rough and tumble and competitive and that kind of thing. Girls obviously have their own version of it, the girl with their dollhouse and whatever. And then the girls each pretending to be a different person. Like they have their play acting, the female ways already, right, from an early age, like the group behaviours, and the men are play acting theirs. Yeah, so that's the next level of emotion. Then above that, you have the person's ideas and thoughts and the ideology they've picked up and just whatever they hear other people saying, and they categorize the emotions they're having based on this very fuzzy models they have of how it all connects and what it all means and what's good, what's bad. That's a big one, isn't it? Good, bad, good, bad. And then it's just filled with words. They just attach words to it, and then they just talk about the words as if the words are the thing, and you're like levels away from the actual experience now, or the actual need, because the base emotional systems, it's not just about experiencing, it's not about sensation, or it's not to give you an experience for the sake of it, it's to get you to do something, it's to emote you, it's to encourage you to do certain actions. Go and find a mate, go and find food, fight off an aggressor, care for your young, play with the other mammals so that you train yourself to do the behaviors, practice play acting fighting because you might have to do real fighting later, that kind of stuff. That's what they're really for. So there's real things you need to do in order to be happy, fulfilled, happy's not even the right word, fulfilled or functional, successful, to survive in those things. And then a lot of it is just people have too much time and money in their hands, and they just go on and on about all the little details. It really doesn't matter. And it's like I said earlier, but there's an assumption that you have to get the emotions right first, and then you can do something. But you need to find a way that you can get yourself to do the things, and then the emotions and the sensations will change anyway. It's just getting yourself to do the thing. So like if you don't know what you need to think or feel in order to do some skill, you just learn to do the skill, and then you will find out what you need to think and feel as you're learning to do it. You know what I mean? The actions first. And a lot of the mind-body practices, people in them, they by definition, they're anti-action. They're against action. It's all about sitting and letting things happen and not struggling, not striving. This is what I mean by it's anti-Western. It's like it's anti-striving. And if there's anything, it's the center of Western culture. It's the striving, individual striving to accomplish things. So if the whole culture is to fight against that, I don't even think people who are explicit about that stuff. So I don't know how much they're all aware of it, but it's even like they're more likely to be passive. They're more likely to be. It's like tied into the. It's being a passive receptor of more and more emotions and sensations. Be more aware. It's awareness is a big thing for them. They want to be aware of more and more things. Well, now what? Okay, you're aware of it. Now what? You're like a prey animal sitting there listening out, like alert with your ears, listening to see if there's any danger coming. Okay, now what? So they can just go back to grazing and having the nice sensations, the nice feelings and stuff. It's all prey behavior. So it's no wonder we're like, that you don't get, it's no wonder all the guys are going to gyms and aggressively lifting weights with targets for how heavy they want to lift and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not my thing, but that's very different mentality from sitting around and going, what's that feeling? Oh, maybe this means this, maybe that means that. Oh, this is related to this. I mean, what's the point? I've done all these things. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. It's I'm frustrated, actually, at some of the years I spent doing a lot of this stuff. So, like, even, so people misunderstand. So when we're talking about your Zen, the way you guys do it and your Zen stuff, that's you're passively, you're sitting there, you're not doing anything or whatever. So that sounds like it's passive, but it actually isn't, because you're training conscious control over yourself. You're not reacting, you're not moving. You're deciding to do something, maintaining your decision, even though it feels bad, or you want to do other things. And then you're achieving dominance over all your feelings and stuff. So the horrible feelings come, but then you overcome it because you watch it or whatever, and you don't react to it. It doesn't rule you. It just happens. So then, like, the samurai goes out and he's definitely doing stuff with his sword. He's not sitting passively. But of course, when people look at this stuff, then they go, oh no, but he's just in the moment and it's all just happening by itself and he's got this perfect Zen. It's like, no, he's fucking training and doing stuff and has a massive conscious control over himself, which is training and a struggle and striving all the time to get that. It just seems like he's just allowing things in the moment because he's done all that hard work. But even in the moment, he's still focused on do the thing in that moment. It's just a very precise thing you need to focus on now because so much stuff has been more or less automated through striving practice. But the soft types who go to mind-body practice, they want to just jump straight to there and just let it all happen. It's like, it's evading responsibility for your own life. It's anti-agency. It's anti-conscious control. Letting things just happen is the opposite of conscious control, unless it's a tool in order to give you more conscious control later, which I think, like the Zen meditation is like that. So you're not like that reactive, physically, mentally, emotionally reactive. So then you can focus on the positions, the placements of your feet, the movement of your sword, the not reactive, the controlling your emotions, those kind of things. Being able to tell the guy your name and the village you're from before you start fighting them and all that. I mean, how are you going to do that? And actually think about what kind of self-control is needed for that, to actually be able to speak rationally, in these little kind of ceremonial fighting and stuff, to be able to have that much control over yourself. That requires things that are traditionally more masculine way of behaving. Self-control, overruling your emotions, doing things that you don't want to do because it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's all courage is. You're doing the thing you need to do even though it feels bad. That's all it is. It's nothing mysterious about it. But the mind-body culture encourages people to believe, wrongly, that you can find a state where you feel right and calm. And if you just be calm enough while you're practicing, then in real life when events happen, you'll be calm in those events too. But you won't be, because you trained yourself in a calm situation with whale music and incense, not like stressed and dangerous situations out in the world. It doesn't go together. So like they think it does, but it really doesn't. You have to train yourself to be calm in dangerous action. I mean, it's obvious when you think about it, but that whole culture is against that because it's a bigger philosophy, which I'm saying is more feminine, cognitively feminine in structure than cognitively masculine. I don't know what it's like now, but people used to say when women became like corporate executives or politicians, they would end up behaving more like men, like Margaret Thatcher and people like that. But it's the same in mind-body practices. When the men go there, they're behaving more, they sit down in circles.
Very, very feminine now. Yeah, it's not.
Now it's different, yes. But I mean, it's like back when I was young, that was like the stereotype, the women suits and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, the mind-body practices, obviously, there's the guys sitting there listening to the women's stories and stuff. I mean, we know what some of those guys are doing, what they're doing. They're not, but some of them really are like part like that. They're like, and they get involved in the gossiping and the boss and stuff like that. That's feminine behavior rather than directly confronting, to undermine behind the scenes, to gossip and slander behind the scenes, to try and get rid of competitors or enemies or whatever. My view now is the whole mind-body culture, as it's done in the West, almost all of it is like this now. It's almost political the way it's behaving as a whole, and I don't think hardly anyone inside it actually realizes that.
So I'm not on Twitter anymore. There used to be a few people on Twitter that were in the whole, sugar tit mind body fucking thing that we're talking about here. Is that still the case? Do you still come across people like that are focused on? Can I borrow a feeling?
One thing I've noticed is that there's a big group of them. They're called Teapot. Have you heard of this group?
Teapot.
No. Teapot.
Is as gay as it sounds.
It's called this part of Twitter, right? So they're into all these kind of mind-body practices and somatic things and this kind of world. But it's a certain category of person. So a certain type of person in general. It seems to be like, I don't know very much about it. I only found out about it within this last year. I'm adjacent to a lot of them on Twitter, So it seems to be like those were guys who were rationalists that then started playing around with mind-body stuff and psychedelics and all those things, and now have they're into all that kind of stuff, Buddhist meditation stuff. They're like tech guys and rationalist types. They're not like right-wing bodybuilders, but they're also not like the woke people. Right. They're like in the middle. They're kind of these rationalist, centrist type
nerds.
People.
They're nerds. That's what you mean, really. They're dorks.
Yes, but they're most of them, and it's mostly men, and they're like non-masculine men, but they're not woke or all of those demographics of people and stuff. So they are very into this, just obsessing over little details and stuff. The guys go around and they try like 100 different practices and stuff, and it's all about experiences to them. It's all about new experiences, being aware of more things, trying new things. It's like pathological curiosity, in my view.
Yeah.
It's maybe even a defense mechanism against actually waking up or spiritual development.
That's the irony of people like this, right? Is that is the problem that you would hope something like that would help them overcome. But it's like they just never notice it. Like they don't notice the...
I think psychedelics is a big factor in it, because
it probably is,
when somebody's like an uptight techie nerd guy or whatever, and they have like a very sort of limited view, when they try that, it just explodes so quickly that you can't help but be obsessed with all the different sensations and experiences. So then that just translates into other things. And then they realize, you can produce some of these similar experiences doing these other practices. You don't actually need to do those things, take those things, or go to the jungle or whatever they do. But that also is like, again, it's like the passive culture. It's like, whether these things are as passive in their own cult, in the traditions and the cultures and places these things come from. I'm not saying whether they are or not. I mean, I'm sure the origins of all these things are very different than the Western version. I'm specifically talking about the Western version, and all of it is, this is something I first noticed with posture stuff, which seems unrelated, but everything is about evading responsibility for consciously being in charge of yourself right now, even though it doesn't feel great, and finding something that will do it for you. That's what it all boils down to. The psychedelics, then it'll give you access to all these things, and then it'll just happen. If I do meditation, then I'll just be enlightened one day, then it'll all just happen by itself. If I do this practice, if I do this body work, it'll just all happen by itself. If I do Reiki and let go of all the emotions, then it'll all just happen by itself. It's always, that's the sort of hidden assumption behind a lot of it, I think. And it's not true. It doesn't happen by itself, but it's very easy to believe it does, because when you start on the path of those things, you realize you're overly tight or agitated or tense about certain things, whether physically or emotionally or mentally. And when you release some of that in the beginning, you have great success, because now you're like, I actually was in my own way there, and now I've got out my own way, it's working better. And that's true in the beginning, but then it becomes like a lifestyle and a philosophy to them, and they just think that more and more of that's better. To me, it's more like a poison medicine. A little bit is a medicine. Keep taking it, it's now poison, and that's what they do. And it's really seductive. And a lot of the old traditions, Eastern stuff, talk about this. You're not meant to pay attention to the Kundalini experiences. You're meant to just do the meditation or whatever it is, because they know that people become obsessed with the stuff, not just Eastern stuff. I mean, Gurdjieff talks about the stuff. Christopher Hyatt talks about it too.
He talks about when you break down, when you're fundamentally breaking something down, you need to build it back up, which a lot of these mind-body practices don't do. They just break down, right? They just undo the tension, undo this, whatever it is. Okay,
and it'll all just happen by itself.
What?
It's anti-conscious. It's anti-active because you're passive. It's anti-conscious because you're hoping for some kind of mystical, either the true unconscious will take over or some higher thing will take over or my higher self will do. If I just do this long enough and I don't do anything, the higher self will start doing it for me. It sounds ridiculous when you say it, but that is what people are saying.
They do think that.
And when you actually meet someone or come across someone who's very skilled and experienced in some kind of tradition or practice that's real and they're legit, they have definite conscious control over their behaviors in the moment. They're not on autopilot, mystical autopilot. They're not. And it's not that different to some normal everyday life practices that can make people more conscious in the moment. It doesn't need to be the end point. When you've gone past all this, the mad experiences, you've gone past all this kind of thing, you're just come back to the idea that you're just an animal on a planet walking around doing stuff. There's better ways to do stuff than other things. You stop wasting your time with a lot of fantasies that you had in your head before, and you just do the thing that's in front of you. It all just boils down to just doing the thing that's in front of you. But that's not the same as letting it just happen. This is the mistake people make, which I think comes down to the masculine feminine dichotomy or split or whatever.
Yeah, and the ideology. I really think these ideologies that surround these things, well, it comes back to what I was saying before as well, right? So we're cognitive animals, and we cognate, so we have ideologies and assumptions about what we're doing, and then we do it, and that really does, shape the flavor of the experience, and then where we take the experience. So to think then that you're just letting things happen is false, because there is definitely an ideology and a bunch of assumptions that all go into that way of framing that particular process. But yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to awareness and meditation and all that kind of stuff, what all it is being watchful of your mind, your moods, emotions. And really, you can do anything, be in a formal sitting scenario. It doesn't need to be anywhere. So whatever you do with awareness is meditation. So you could be lifting weights, going for a surf. You could be doing any number of things. It doesn't need to be in a formal setting at all. It's just that the formal setting helps drill it down and to focus on it, because it is a difficult thing to do. It puts
you in a situation where you keep doing the thing even though you feel bad about it and you don't want to keep doing it. That's the point. If you're lucky to be the type of person who can have enough self-discipline and agency to make yourself do the thing, some people have more of that than others. But you can train it. You can train the little bit you have and make it a little bit better. So I think there's that aspect of personality can actually pretty fixed if people don't do some long-term training on it. But I think you can. But chicken or egg, you need to be a certain type of person who will do the long-term training.
Yeah, which no one does.
So you already have to have enough of it to do it.
People are fucking lazy, mate. They're fucking lazy.
And in terms of brain system, it's more changeable than I believe. And I've definitely got better at that myself, because I was extreme, all of these issues that I'm talking about, and I'm not as bad now. So the aim would be able to, the ideal aim would be to be able to do that in your normal life. It's the chop wood, carry water thing. What do you do before enlightenment? What do you do after chop wood, carry water? It's that. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, that's the Zen guys. They're all are the most obvious people talking about just doing the thing in front of them, and it's almost a cliche about it.
Just quickly on that, funnily enough, part of the retreat is what they call work chores. So you don't get to just go and, feel. you have to go and clean the toilet or do the dishes. And the idea is obviously then to try and introduce what you're doing in practice into everyday stuff, which is kind of the point. But
exactly, yeah. And with samurais, obviously, it's like, it's you're going to be doing the fighting. It's to help you the fighting or whatever. And I mean, in theory, all these things could be normal life, but in practice, for most people, it's to have a practice and a place and a thing to go to that restricts you from the outside, because especially in the beginning, you've got all these whims, and it's only the desire to do some practice or whatever like goal you have at the time. Sometimes they're like comical, the original goals people have when they start these things, fantasies. But when you start, the reason you're doing it just becomes you like in the beginning. There's so many different things going on that your desires for. This is only one of them, so we'll just get bumped off for one of the other things, unless you're actually kept in place to keep doing it until that desire becomes a bit bigger and overtakes some of the other things. So it's useful for that. But yeah, I mean, this is like an ancient discussion, isn't it? Whether you can do it, what they call it in India, is it householders, something like that?
Samanas or shramanas or something. They used to go out and
you just go about normal life, yeah. And Gurdjieff says things that, the fourth way is like you're just doing it in normal life. So like, yeah, it's just whether you can find a thing to do.
The fortitude. It's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy. And I think the way I view retreats and why I like to do them is they're a nice little tuning fork. So you can just go there and get back into that intensively. It kind of acts as a little bit of a reminder, I suppose. And here's the other thing. So I'm just thinking of how to summarize how I feel about this emotional culture kind of thing, and how that when people go to a retreat, I feel like they're searching for a feeling primarily more than anything else. And that's their orientation towards the practice, like bliss and awakening and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that you're right, and the emotional system clearly exists as a part of the general arousal system. And the reason they exist is because they do drive us towards action. And in order to do this, we need executive planning. We need to cognate. And, we're cognitive animals. It's what we do. And I think we've also gone through the primitive emotions, survival related and necessary. But there's another whole world of emotions, a world above this primitive drive level that are not primary. So they are, how would you say, they're downstream. They're downstream of concepts. They're downstream of thinking. They're downstream of metaphysical beliefs that were inculcated in us when we were young, or the different ideologies we picked up as we've gotten older. So it's very correct, in my opinion, with all I understand about the latest in neuroscience and various other things, and listening to Mark Soames, for example, which I've really been getting into him lately, that in essence, emotions arise from the way we think and the way we're thinking, and from concepts that we hold, concepts about the world, and even the practice that we're engaging in means that gives rise to various emotions. I think that the fundamental flaw in this, at least when it comes to Zen and various traditions like that, is actually awakening has nothing to do with emotions per se. Emotions per se, things that come up from thinking, and in some sense, because we're after distilling our experience of awareness, that both thinking and emotions are really two things that kind of get in the way of our striving towards a greater degree of conscious control. And that very often what people experience are intuitions or epiphanies regarding the inappropriate thinking they've been engaging in that has maybe led to the emotional world that they've been trying to get out of. And I've heard many people have experiences like that, where they just have the thoughts and they see what's really happening. And they're like, oh, that's what's going on, And they change their thinking about things. And thus, they change your emotional experience. And I think that what Western society has done through the genealogies that we were describing before, through therapy and through feminine type values, processing the world emotionally. Although I was thinking that I do struggle to believe that women do this. I know that they're more subject to emotions, but I don't think they're inhuman. I think they're better than mollusks. You know what I mean? I do think that they can exercise control over themselves in the same way. And clearly they can when you look at history, even though they approach the world more so regarding feelings and various other things. But the Western culture has inverted the essential scientific truth. So what they're doing instead, and a lot of these mind-body people are doing, and a lot of people involved in Zen and Buddhism and yoga and blah, 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 it all goes on, is number one, they're focused on the expression of emotions as a panacea to feeling better about the world. And as you say, that is just the expectation that if I express repressed emotions, then everything will work itself out and I don't need to do anything. That's my problem, is that I'm repressed. But the other thing is that they've flipped the script. So it's become about the emotions, and the thinking is, they think that the thinking will be fixed if the emotions are looked at and felt. And of course, that's nonsense. That is total rubbish. There's no evidence for that anywhere. No serious psychologist or anyone thinks that. It's a complete load of commie gobbledygook, and the opposite is the case. So what I always think, and what I've experienced to be the case, is that, okay, letting go of tensions and meditating and maybe having nice experiences, even though it's not mostly nice, it's mostly incredibly unpleasant. That's all one thing. But at the same time, there needs to be a conscious orientation and analysis of the way that we think and the way that what we believe fundamentally about ourselves, and the impact that these things are having on our experience as cognitive animals, almost primarily, in a way. And I think if people flipped it back and use these practices in the context that I'm going to use them to open myself up to more rigorous, objective, rigorous, autistic self-analysis, to learn more about myself and to change things about myself deliberately and in a considered fashion. And that the emotions, the feelings, and various sensations, that will follow that process. They don't come first, they come afterwards. And in essence, if you have bad feelings, it's coming from bad concepts, actually. That's the fucking problem. You've got shit concepts that you need to look at. And these practices can help loosen you up so you become more open to perceiving these things, I think. It's one of their great benefits. And they also open you up, or they till the soil so you can put new beliefs and thinking into it and it can grow. That's the other way I view it. But in essence, I guess I think the Western world has flipped it around the wrong way. These people have flipped it around the wrong way. And it's not that one or the other is bad. It's just that, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're just sitting there feeling. As you say, what's the fucking point of that? There's no fucking point to that. The point of living is living.
It's not even just...
is living. That's the point.
It's not even just their pro-feeling and obsessed with feelings and sensations. It's a lot of them in mind-body culture are actively anti-thinking. That's what they're against. They're like, no, this. I've not noticed
this. I've maybe not had as much to do with them as you.
Well, they'll tell you they're anti-intellectual. So they're...
Sure.
Well, first of all, they misunderstand what thinking is. They think words going round and round in your head is thinking. So they say,
rather than rumination.
The problem is everybody's overthinking. The problem is everyone's overthinking. That's like, you'll hear that a lot. People overthink things, but they're not really overthinking things. They're just doing these inner speech loops that are driven by emotion. They're just like, it's an emotion that's been driven in the words, and then they get lost in the words and they don't understand what the emotion is and the action they need to do. So they're not actually overthinking, they're overfeeling. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, a lot of them in the practices, they're anti-intellectual. They'll say, stop thinking and worrying about those things, just let it happen, just trust the practice, get out of your head, get into your body. You hear that a lot. In sports and skill learning, they'll say, which is not true, they'll say, oh, experts don't think, they just do it. It's just totally not true. They're absolutely consciously thinking and controlling themselves. It's just very precise things, because they've trained a whole bunch of other stuff. They're not just laying up like an expert who's trying to get better.
Yeah,
they're not just they're not in flow.
Yeah,
they're not in flow. This is like made flow. I have serious. I hate the term flow, actually, and I hate everybody who talks about it. I can't stand it. It's bullshit, as far as I'm concerned. And flow is true if you're low level at something and you're just cruising and you don't care. If you're actively trying to get better at something, your cognition is always involved. You're always doing something. It's not just happening by itself. It's just imaginary. Flow is for midwits, because you can be a midwit and have flow. But if you're actually trying to be an expert at something,
he's into flow states.
Yes,
you reckon?
He's the flow guy. And the guy on the left and the guy on the right are both saying, I need to think about what I'm doing.
Right.
And the guy in the middle saying, I'm just in flow and let it happen by itself.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
The two guys on either end, it's different reasons they have to think about what they're doing, but they still have to think about what they're doing in the moment.
Yeah, one's trying to tie his shoelaces and the other one's doing an equation, maybe.
Not like a lot of them will say, I don't know, some of the guys that are good at equations aren't even good at tying shoelaces, to be honest. But a lot of the guys will say they're anti-intellectual in the sense that, they have a point. People are lost in words and stuff, but I don't think that's thinking. I think that's emotions, and they're trapped in words and they're out of control inner speech. A lot of people who do mind-body practices, they find their inner speech loops just disappear or go quiet. So they make the mistake as in going, okay, that tool worked and did this. They think now that's a philosophy and a way of life, and they keep doing more of it. Get rid of it. And a lot of the people talking about experts think they just do it rather than have like conscious control in the moment. So all of this is like a kind of anti-intellectual culture, because they're reacting to kind of Western modern culture. And they have a point in one side of it, but they're just like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Really, you should be tidying up and controlling your thinking, not getting rid of it. And then what do they do in the practices? It's focus on the sensation, focus on the feeling. You're like, not the words in your head. Notice that you were just thinking words in your head and stuff. So these are good, useful tools for people. But to me, that's like you said earlier, it's making a space, quieting all the noise down, making a space for you then to be able to consciously control actual things and do actions.
Freeing up energy. It's kind of like,
it's not about sitting in your pants at the side of the road in India.
Yeah. It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
Or living in a cave. By the way, I've been playing a game with myself to mention this in every podcast. I think I've managed it one or two, I forgot maybe. So him, our buddy. We haven't mentioned our other friend yet, the mollusk. We haven't mentioned him yet.
Mollusk down on his luck. Yeah, old Tola. But he's rich. He ain't fucking about. He's got all these people hooked.
That's another thing about the just do it crowd, the just let it happen by itself crowd, is someone like Tola or those type of guys, or
Rupert. What's his name? Rupert fucking the guy that says everything's nothing. Yeah.
Everything's nothing. Simple as that. Done. So they are just let it happen, the universe will do it for you, and all that kind of mentality, and that's what they're teaching people. Total passivity, let it happen, trust, abandon yourself to the wisdom of your body, or abandon yourself to the wisdom of the universe, all these things. But how their life has been organized and they're getting very rich. How? Because there's some people around them who consciously controlling what's happening and making things happen and organizing things around them. So yes, in a way, for that guy, the universe is doing it for him. Yeah, but not everybody can the universe do it for him, because there's no one left to do the stuff unless you're gonna. It's just what AI's for, so we can all just sit around in our pants inside of the road, like the robots will do all for us. No, do you know what I mean? Though that's
no, totally.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we're animals that are built for action first. So we're built for movement. Our thinking comes out of our need to move. This is like. I'm certain of this. I don't think this is even a theory. I'm personally certain that it all comes from needing to move action. And to to not engage with that, you're not going to be fulfilled and happy as a human animal. If you're just sitting around passively, how can you be? Because you're designed to move, to act.
To live.
A lot of the cultures, it's against that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, I did an article. I was just going to say quickly on that. I did an article on the rat experiments. What was that guy's name? Henry Laborit or something. He's a famous French doctor. He won the Nobel Prize, but he did the electrocution experiments on rats. And that's what they found, that all mammals are like that, and they just have to act. And if you put them in a position where they can't act, they just become depressed and, just basically just try to die effectively. But if you give them the scope to act, no matter how hopeless it is, then they have better blood measurements, better measurements all around than the ones that just have no chance for escape. It's an interesting experiment. I should send you a link to it. But for sure, we're doing animals. There's no doubt. I agree with you that, thinking probably arose from movements, the need to move and stuff. Yeah, it seems very
and
logical.
Predict movements. Right up to cognition, it's obvious. It's like this whole the ability to systematize things. Obviously, that just comes out of, like I said earlier, the group hunting. That's much more advanced. But even before that, there's like the need to organize the different, because there's multiple movements happening in your body to perform an action. Actions are made of movements, and what the modern brain might think is, well, there's a bunch of movements and they add up together to an action. So you move your arms and your legs, and all these different movements of your body are happening, and then that creates an action, like as a result of all the many parts. But actually, what it is you have a goal. Like the creature has a will for something, so this is like a lot of this precognitive, obviously, but it has a will for something. And then in order to achieve that goal, to go and get that food or whatever, the drive forward, the idea or the model of the future, the thing is, it recruits the right movements for the job. You know what I mean? So the action is first, the goal directed movements is before the actual movements. So this is how I do this in posture as well. It's not like you get your leg down. It's not like fix for posture. Okay, so you need to fix the feet like this, then do this with your hip, and then do this. You don't just one by one fix all the different things and then they add up to good posture. You have to be doing things, and while you're doing them, try and recruit the movements in a different way than you're doing habitually. Do you know what I mean? It's like the mind is at the front. A living conscious creature is at the very front. Obviously, they're not as cognitive as us lower down, but the little animals having some kind of experience. You're an idiot if you don't think they are. Yeah. But it's like, whatever's happening, and it's being drawn towards one thing rather than another thing. So that whatever's drawn towards food or to escape or whatever it is, just that little movements, it recruits its movements, its body parts into action to achieve that goal. So, like a human pick up a glass of water, the desire to pick up the glass of water comes first, and then you recruit the movement of the arm, the reaction of the rib cage to the arm moving forward, blah, 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 your movement of your eyes to where the object is. You glance, you notice something in the distance, and then you scan past it, and then you go back to the thing, you lock onto the thing. So the movements come after the goal, in my view, even at very basic goals that are almost like chemically induced goals. It's still the same thing, I think. So if your whole approach to mind-body practices and mind-body unity doesn't have the thinking, goal-directed stuff, how can you be complete? How can you be mind-body be united if you don't have the main thing that makes humans human, which is this cognitive, long-term planning and executing goals and recruiting multiple people and using speech to coordinate things, to understand things, to make things happen, to get something or escape from something over time, rather than just live in the moment now and not think and just let it happen. It's like very anti-evolutionary, that kind of the whole attitude in mind-body practices. And in my view, they throw out half the mind. So they keep the part of the mind that you're to focus on the sensations and the feelings. So obviously it's mental, maintaining your attention, deliberately keeping your attention on one thing and not letting it and bringing it back when you become distracted. That's obviously a mental faculty. So, but all that, so that part of the mind they're using, but that's just to be directed on lower sensations and feelings and things like that. You're not meant to be reasoning or thinking or understanding a system of relations or language, like words, these are mental tools. So if you don't have all of these things, you've just thrown out half the mind. How can you have mind-body unity if all you're doing is paying attention to your sensations and feelings? It doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
But it makes sense to them because they're reacting against all that. They're being anti-intellectual, they're being anti-culture, they're being anti-active, goal-driven culture. That's what they're against.
Yeah. Well, when you drill down into the detail, it was incoherent. Even when I was thinking about it today, just thinking about, okay, what is an emotion? How do we know the words that we're putting on them, or even what we're feeling? Everything is incoherent, and it just comes from these fundamentally wrong assumptions about what's going on. And
they're listening to their body. They're listening to the sensations as if the sensation knows these things.
And they're saying, fucking move, motherfucker. God damn, what are you fucking sitting here for? Yeah.
You were saying about humans being more cognitive than we realize and stuff like that. And an example of that is the Buddhists, some of the Buddhists, like the Vipassana Gyan, a lot of them seem to think that they're being aware of raw sensations without any cognitive thing. It's just like there's the raw sensation, and they're at the base level somehow.
Sure.
That stuff that come into you, the raw sensations, are already being processed, and cognitively you've already done a bunch of stuff before you even become aware of something. It's not the raw reality at all. Korzybski is the best person to explain that side of it. But they seem to think there's no cognition involved. They're just watching raw sensations. But what are they doing when they watch the raw sensations? They're looking to see how it's impermanent. They're looking to see how there's no self. They're looking to see how whatever the other one is. And they don't, those are cognitive ideas. Those are like conceptions of what they're doing. So how can you be looking to see that it's impermanent when you're just looking at raw sensations? You're not now. You're now thinking, So it's all, but it's not separate. It's all combined together.
Yeah, it is.
So what I'm saying is better practices would be to include all of that anyway and do active things and include this stuff in that rather than necessarily having to be anti-thinking, anti-cognition. Think about you're running around doing something and you're having to think in the moment and find things. You're not just doing repeating reps. You're having to actually think about what you're doing and focus on what you're doing because there's wrong ways and right ways you can do it if you're, I don't know, running along a window ledge or something. It's a lot different focus than just going for a jog on a treadmill. So or if you're like out in the wild, trying to orientate yourself in the wild while being chased, figure out the way to get where you're going, having to think, or you're on a boat, you're looking at the stars, trying to work out what direction you're going and all this stuff, and while doing all this physical things to stop yourself from drowning and control the boat and all that stuff. That's thinking in action. That's not like letting your feelings and sensations do it for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
they're just feelings and sensations. They literally can't do anything. Like they're not designed.
Yeah, useless.
Yeah.
No, that's not what they're designed for.
Yeah.
Sensations just tell you something's changed.
Yeah, you need to move.
Feeling, I tell someone to move themselves in a different way, to coordinate a different posture, and then it feels weird straight away. The first thing they do, why does it feel weird? Because it's not used to it, and your sensations are just saying, warning, warning, there's been a change.
Yeah.
And you interpret the change almost everybody automatically as bad. Change is bad because it's homeostasis or whatever, even though it's a bad homeostasis, but it feels familiar, so you want to keep it. So if I give a different movement and then I say to them, look, you're probably going to just do it anyway, even if it feels bad, and then do this other thing and add in all these things, and even if it feels bad, eventually it stops feeling bad because now they're used to the new thing. But then I'm giving them more new things that then they feel bad. They've forgotten about this trail of 10, 20 bad feelings they had about different things because they're now focused on the new one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's all been pulled together after. So like the emotions and the feelings, the sensations are in the wake of the action. And just to finish my rant is that the whole of mind-body practices is based on the opposite conception. It's got it backwards. They think you get the emotions and the sensations first, and then you will do good actions, better actions. It doesn't work like that. Not how humans are designed, I don't think. And it's boring.
It is boring. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking as you were saying that, I mean, that's probably why you get the archetype of the depressed, dope smoking, fucking useless hippie, in a pair of tight fisherman's pants, going to therapy and all this stuff. And like, oh, I'm so depressed. I can't figure out why. It's probably just because they're just so inactive and they're not focusing on doing. They're focusing on just sitting around feeling stuff, which, would cause a depressive mind state. So, so maybe there's something to that.
It's true, but what the mind-body people will say is, and I've heard them say this, they'll say is that person's just running from their feelings. The overly active people are just running from their feelings, and they haven't, they're not as wise as me because they haven't accepted. Like Elon Musk he's got all these issues and he's overcompensation for penalty to video, like all these things that are like, even if it was true, does it not look like he's fixed it? It's not by accident. He said. It doesn't even make sense, even on a basic level. That's just ways to feel superior to people.
I love watching people judge him. Like, of all the people in the world you're going to judge, oh, he's not good at business. I heard someone say he wasn't good at business the other day. It was actually at work.
There's like journalists. There's business journalists about who write on finances or whatever, and they're a journalist for a job, and they're saying how he's got things wrong, and that's just like no self-awareness. And then they like the midwit thing of, that they're just lucky. Other people could have done it too, just lucky. Why didn't other people do it? You know what I mean? It's like, he's a good example of what I was saying about the desire for the action drive recruits the required movements. So all those things like space, the rockets and stuff wasn't happening because people were trying to, get the movements to happen, but there was nothing driving the action with the vision, So when it just takes one guy, and he doesn't need to totally understand every detail. I mean, I think he actually understands quite a lot about it, but that will recruit all the people and make it happen. So it isn't a case of someone else could have done it too, in theory, but in practice, there wasn't the person providing the leading edge of the action is what someone like that's role is, Sure. Yes, he doesn't know all the details about every single little thing some engineer knows, but that engineer wasn't able to do it on his own. This is for the, Yeah. I think that's just actually the same coordinated group action like that is just a higher level of what we were talking about, actually.
Yeah.
You're not going to Mars based on, let's say the moon. You're not going to the moon based on feelings and sensations.
No.
You're going based on a rational plan and adjusting the plan based on feedback from
there
things
could be,
happen.
though, in a universe of infinite possibilities, there could be an interstellar snail race. So maybe like... It's possible you go
take me to your Tolly.
Yeah, that's fucking classic. Of all the people you would judge, honestly. I mean, look, there are things about him that piss me off, like this fucking whole population thing. But goddamn, like trying to act you're superior to him in some way, like as a journalist, no less. What a disgrace. But people do it. There were even people at work, of course, when Trump had his glorious victory the other day. And what you notice is, like, particularly white-collar managerial types are really against it because part of their job is virtue signaling to others that, I don't believe in that kind of thing, like, because I'm above it like you are. So when it happened, I was in the office and, everyone just lost their shit, like people were visibly distraught. And this is in Sydney, Australia. Think about that for a second. I mean, what fucking does it matter to you in your little fucking world? But we're all talking about it and, it's because of education. You see, they're not educated. If they were educated like me, they wouldn't have voted for him, all these sorts of statements. And then Elon came up and then it was like, oh, he's such a bad guy. Like one of them said, like he didn't even earn his money. His dad gave it to him, or how there's that rumor going around. And anyway, it was just maybe
they always say that. They always say like, if somebody had any money in the beginning, they say, oh, he only did that because of whatever. And then you say, well, okay, so he started with $1 million, but he made $2 billion. And then I can't do the maths on this, but I'll say, okay, so let's just say you You've had 1,000 before, yes? Okay, why didn't you turn the 1,000 into
a
a million?
Yeah.
Why don't make me do the maths live on the podcast?
Yeah.
So it's, but a lot of these things, it's not driven by thoughts. It's not thinking.
No,
it's emotional
pure
reactions. They
emotion.
just feel, somebody makes them feel bad, or they feel envious, or they feel angry, or whatever. Doesn't matter. It's like good guy, bad guy.
Yeah, and educated, not educated.
It's
Apparently, that's a dichotomy they like as well.
Well,
as if doing an accounting degree makes you understand the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's those educated people who created the situation that created the led to the desire of so many people to have other type of people 100%. In charge instead of them. But they don't see it like that, because it's not thinking. If it's thinking, you want to understand the history of the development of that situation. How did this start? What happened? You want to see the forces, the conflicting forces all through time. And then you see the patterns through time and you go, okay, so now I understand that. They don't do that. It's a snapshot of now. How do I feel now? Who is the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Yeah. They don't think in terms of, my behavior caused this. They actually are stupid for second order effects. It's plus
feelings is proof, right?
It's
feelings is proof. Yeah, it's like saying I feel this way, therefore that is proof that this is this way, rather than, as you say, thinking about it. An
extension of that in mind-body practice is, this feeling feels nice. I am enjoying this feeling, therefore this feeling is good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like an assumption. It's an understandable assumption, because roughly speaking, things that feel good are versus things that feel bad. Like if you cut your toe, it's going to feel bad for good reason. If you eat a nice berry and you're starving off a tree, it's going to feel good, maybe. It's the right berry. So like it's already a grey area about whether good feelings are necessarily good for you. Just because it feels good doesn't mean it is good. That's what I always say about posture stuff to people. Yeah. But that's so hard for people to change. And you already have to be a certain type of person with a kind of slightly aggressive, masochistic streak to want to do things that are going to make you feel bad for long-term benefit.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, you do. You're going to have problems.
And then again, this is the opposite of living in the moment. So like if your mind-body practices encourage you to live in the moment and search for the good feelings now, you're going to search for the good feelings now in the rest of your life too. You're going to eat the junk food. You're going to make the bad short-term decision for gain now, and it's going to lose you a lot in the future. You know what I mean? It's not like these things have a cost. It has consequences. It has consequences, this kind of behavior for your normal life, not just the practice.
I totally agree. And, in a way, it's also that, got to be a little bit careful, because I do think they can be powerful tools. This is, I think, the way people need to start thinking about them, rather than pledging unending loyalty to
exactly tools, not lifestyles.
Exactly.
Good, bad. It's just a tool isn't good or bad. It's either
just
suitable or unsuitable. It's suitable or unsuitable. Suitable for what? For your goal. Or you may not have an exact goal. It may be exploration. So you're still using the tool for a goal. The goal is to see what happens, even if you don't necessarily know it or have it clarified, or you're trying it in different ways to see which one is the best one. Then you'll follow that one on purpose. Still tools. Mind-body practices, techniques, these are mental tools. Do this thing, sit and do this. When this happens in your mind, tell yourself this, do this. You're using words in your mind to, my back is sore, I'm going to get up. Oh shit, I'm in a Zen retreat, I can't get up, I look stupid, or this isn't what I'm here for. You're talking to yourself, you're instructing yourself, you're overcoming your feelings and sensations with cognition. I will stay put even though it feels bad. This is not like emotion. I think people think because of a lot of the fitness guys, the overly no pain, no gain kind of guy, they seem to think that you're just swapping a bad emotion for a good emotion. So I just like self-discipline. You just drive down this other emotion on top of the weak emotion. But it isn't. It's conscious control of yourself. Oh yes, there it comes. I knew I would feel bad 20 minutes in and I'd have a pain. But I remember it goes away. If I stay at it, I'll get a second wind, it'll go away later. I'll just stay here. Oh, I really want to go, I'm really bored. No, just come back to what I'm doing, count the breath or whatever it is the person's doing. Conscious control, using mental tools, words. That's not just living in your sensations and feelings. People are like completely deluded with the stuff. And I don't think the original people in the cultures that come up with the stuff were deluded like this.
No.
I haven't read all the sources, but I really don't think this is the way it was like. I think this is just current Western soft mentality.
It is. And again, I do think it comes from mistakes that some people made in the 30s and 40s, probably. I do think it comes from the idea of repression, and that somehow if you were to get rid of this magical repression internally in terms of emotions, then everything just sorts itself out, and then you become a whole, wonderful person again. And I just think that fundamental idea has pervaded everything. And, I suppose there were overlaps between psychoanalysis and spirituality, right? In the 50s and 60s, those things kind of coalesced, and you had a lot of body work people like Lowen or Boadella who really went down that emotion path, and they were getting into yoga, and there was kind of these exchanges between these people. And yeah, it's just pervaded everything. It pervaded psychology for a long time. I don't think it's necessarily that way so much anymore with CBT, for example. They don't really do that. But, trauma, this whole idea of trauma, don't get me fucking started on trauma. Just this whole, it's all derivative from what is a bad concept, a wrong concept, first of all. So first of all, it's scientifically wrong. But it's also just practically, it doesn't work very well, as we've been discussing. And you've just had an entire cultural stream in the West go completely off the rails because of a bad concept. And you can just see its influence in absolutely everything. And they got it the wrong way around. They inverted the truth. And the truth is, bad concepts lead to bad emotions. And if
I think it's a lot of it is, I never ever thought this until recently, but I think a lot of it is also political. I think I don't mean culture war stuff right now. I think that's just an expression of a deeper
political
thing.
In what way? Interesting. I'd like to know.
In a deeper way, where so you had the Western culture. You had the it was all the Christian stuff, and then the Enlightenment and the Science Revolution. Then it was becoming very rational, scientific, future orientated prior to the World War I. And then a lot of the stuff, I think, is a reaction to that kind of Anglo-Protestant mentality of the world, that's different from other cultures. So you got everyone just running on this. By the time of the 60s, they're running to the Eastern stuff as a reaction to what they don't like about the West. They don't like this rational,
legalistic, miserable.
Yeah, they don't like this stuff, which is very.
Yeah.
But this is before it really got bad, though. This is prior to World War I. This is like where that stuff was like practical. It was like they were trying to do things like Elon Musk is doing. That was that kind of mentality. It was like real progress, actually, like technical, and obviously with the wars fucked all this up. A lot of it, or contorted it, kind of better way to say it. So I think a lot of it was people reacting to the annoying parts of Western civilization and jump to the other way. So they automatically go to things that they perceive semi-consciously that is against it. So Eastern passive stuff, well, that's East versus West. Then passive versus active. The West too active, so I'll find something passive.
Yeah.
It's too masculine. They see that kind of striving for goals too. It's too masculine. Then we find something that's more feminine. They ignore the body. They're harsh on the body in the West. It was like, you go to school and then you go to the gym. It was like the mind-body training split, you did both, but they were kind of separate, and the physical stuff was harsh. So you get the people who don't like physical sports and harsh physical things are going to be react against that and go and find the thing that's been soft to your body and nice to your body. Do you know what I mean? It's like a cultural reaction kind of thing. Some of it justified, some of it not. And then you've got people who are kind of more conscious of what's happening and they're pushing against it. And I think some of the people who are into all this stuff, they're actively trying to collapse the current civilization. I think some of them aren't, but they think that they're trying to make it better because if you soften it up and that, they think that'll fix some of the problems. Some of the problems don't exist. They just believe they do.
Yeah.
Some of the problems are real, and this isn't the way to fix them. So
most
I think
of them are not real. Let's face it. Most of it is, as I was saying, just downstream of bad concepts, like that don't, make any sense. But
And then you just got people in general, or for all the other reasons, like the health guys will be esoteric health guys will be listening to this and be like, what about all the nutrition that's making people less testosterone and all that? Well, all those things are happening too, and it's all part of the thing. So all that stuff too, it's not one thing, obviously. We've talked about one thingism more than once. So, yeah, I mean, I think the mind-body practice thing is, I mean, this is really just recent insights into this. I haven't put it together like this as being all a big connected process until recently, but all the details I've seen for a long time. Yeah. For over a decade, I've been paying attention to this stuff, and it's like, it's just something not right about it. There's like, just a good example of a person who did it both ways, and I think made an error, who's influenced me a lot, is F.M. Alexander. So he started with it was much more about conscious control and mechanical understandings and very technical and self-directed. You did it to yourself, in control of yourself, and you had to work hard and be disciplined and spend a lot of time figuring it out and experimenting with yourself and reasoning about what you were doing, about your movements and your actions and the mind-body connection. All very kind of from that, it very flows out of the tradition of the Anglo-Western tradition, and like even from the pragmatists. And he's not a pragmatist, but he's like connected to that, and he's coming from that tradition. And from before that, it's like the Protestant self-responsibility and stuff like that. That's quite a particular culture compared to the rest of the world. So he started it like that. That was his technique, was like that, where you're in charge of yourself. It's very conscious and directed. It's very, as I say, technical. And then he realized people didn't have enough self-discipline to do it the way he did it. So he started just putting his hands on people, manipulating their body into place for them because it was taking too long or people didn't have the discipline. Even there's a quote where he says, "You can do what I've done, but none of you have the discipline. But none of you want the discipline," something like that. So eventually he just started putting his hands on a little bit to help them to quicken the process. And then eventually by the end, he's doing nothing but hands-on, and he's barely even giving them any instructions or any mechanical stuff at all. He's just doing it to them. And he even says, "Oh, I can do it for them now." So over the years, he started at the late 1890s, in the early 1890s, with the conscious, more masculine approach, actually, technical and mechanical, and self-agency. It's about agency. To later, it's hands-on. It's now somatic, and you do it for them, and touchy-feely kind of thing. And that's what's now called the Alexander technique. I think he got caught up in a lot of this stuff in the 20th century. A lot of this what we're talking about, the somatic approach that developed and all this emotional stuff. I'm going to get in trouble now as well. He had a couple of women helpers, secretaries and stuff, who I've read some of their stuff that one of them has written, and they're into all this stuff. And then, it's becoming fashionable, all this, the somatic hands-on stuff and that. And women are just more interested in general in the touchy-feely stuff and the feeling nice and stuff, not the mechanical, strict standing in front of it or doing experiments over and over.
Maybe it works for them. Do you think it works for women?
It does, yeah, but it's for certain types, yeah. Some of my
because you know how they talk to shrinks, right? And then they're like they just talk about their problems, and it seems to work for them. Whereas if a dude does that, yes, but I don't get fuck all because you got to do something. I
mean, those I don't get the way I do it now. I get ones who are more technically minded, you actually are more closer to the masculine, cognitively masculine way of thinking, and are much more rational and technical and smart in that kind of way. And when I used to do it with the hands-on, I got more of the other kind of women, the emotional, sensory kind of women, because they want the hands-on stuff. And I even had people who, when I switched over from the hands-on to the more technical stuff, you could say from a feminine approach to a more masculine approach, I had one woman just, not doing that, dropped out explicitly for that reason, which was a good example of this, actually, I just remembered. So, not that I have a problem with that, it's totally legit, that's not what they want, so it's fine. So that is like the whole of the Alexander's work, I think, was like that. He went in reverse. I'm going back the other way now. I think that was an error. I think he was influenced by the women around him. That's very controversial, I would just say, for Alexander people, not for you. I think, and then the 20th century, then obviously the 60s kicked off. I mean, Alexander died 55, and then the 60s, all the Eastern stuff really started to take off and all those other things. So it just got all caught up. And that's Alexander thing now is just another somatic thing where people put hands on and it's about feeling and stuff like that. and they kind of ignore Alexander's early books because he's talking about reasoning and mechanical stuff. They just kind of ignore it because it doesn't make sense to them, and it doesn't.
Right.
It's two different techniques. I'm writing about this, by the way, the two different Alexander techniques. So he's an example of the process that I think is he's like one microcosm of the bigger process that was going on. That's kind of my take on it now.
It's interesting, just back to the politics thing, maybe it fits into what you're saying, but a number of these people were explicitly communist. And I do wonder, and again, we're talking about the whole Rousseauan connection and power structures and repression and all these kinds of things. I do wonder how much the communist outlook also has something to do with this. And I think it must do, surely. I mean, you were talking about throwing off the yoke of, Anglo civilization, and because it was too masculine, or however you want to describe it. But you saw something similar politically happening. It's obviously reaching a zenith right now, right? But I know a lot of people in the mind-body thing did fundamentally probably subscribe to those elements of communism about, being repressed, or, a product of colonial repression, or, whatever elements of it you want to talk about. And you do see that in people, actually. You do see that, right?
For definite. I mean, even to take Alexander as an example, people go back to his first book and they're calling him like a fascist and all this stuff, but he's just talking like a guy in the late 19th, early 20th century talked, just normal way of talking about progress and civilization. There was nothing like
fascist.
There's no nasty edge to it. It was just facts to them then. So a lot of people are reacting against that now, but even from earlier, and they just see. I mean, everything we've talked about here, some people will see us as like these like evil maniacs or whatever. But it's just like I honestly think I'm just describing what's true. Yeah. For you, yes, I'm still trying to be a nice person.
Right, yeah. You do that.
I need approval from the feminine culture. Right. But yeah, I mean, I'm like I was saying earlier. I mean, so like, it's not either or that all men are good at, or for what I'm teaching, all men can be good at it and all women aren't. It's not at all true. Loads of men are rubbish at it, and I've had a few women who are really good at it and really suited to it. So it's not like they're not manly women. It's just their way of thinking is more masculine.
It's part of the danger, don't you think? I was just going to say just quickly, because that is something we want to talk about. Yeah, like it's the danger of even using the terms masculine and feminine in a way. Like I understand the use of it, but
that's what I was trying to say, way of thinking and stuff like that. But people have misunderstood it. They'll think I'm meaning muscly guys do this. And whatever, and then they're like, "Oh, but what about?" It gets all caught up in the politics. So what's happened to me is basically I'm not interested in culture war stuff, really, and I've tried to avoid it. But I've tried to solve a problem, and the problem is how to have a Western mind-body practice. And to solve the problem, I came up against this. It's like the culture war is already in there. It's like you can't escape it. It's like I didn't want to get involved in it or talk about this stuff. I mean, I don't want this stuff to be. It'd be nicer and easier if this stuff wasn't true. That everybody was, all the men and women's approaches was just the same, and it didn't matter which practice you did. They all lead to enlightenment, and the more people doing a practice, the better the world will be, and everyone will be loving and all that. It's not true though. But, it's not an appropriate path for many people, and they're going to waste a lot of time and kill off a lot of creative work, actually, especially for men, if they try and go down the more kind of feminine approach, which makes them more passive and less striving towards goals.
Yeah, and wear tight fisherman's pants. I've seen dudes do that.
Everyone knows someone who was really successful and they're doing things and they're really active in that, and then they go into some kind of weird shit and then they just became a bum, or they just get zoned out or whatever, but they feel like they've made an improvement. Well, they haven't objectively, but they feel like they have. So, and they're being constantly reinforced. Trust your feelings. If you feel it must be true. So, it's just you just end up caught in that loop.
Sure. Do you think though? So this is my contention: is that although those binaries exist, they don't necessarily need to be antithetical. So, for example, maybe there is a place where someone like an Elon could do something involving more conscious control, or I don't know, it could be various things, maybe something that you do, or even a bit of breath work in the morning or something, or whatever it is. And it may actually improve his productivity potentially, do you think? So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily that someone needs to end up a failure if they were to do something like that. In fact, it can have an enhancing effect.
Oh, no. Yeah, of course, if they do the right thing for that person. So sometimes you need to do the thing that's against your natural style because you're too far one way. So you need to kind of soften up the rough edges by doing something against how you normally do. But sometimes you need to do something that's more appropriate to the person because you're going to ruin the best parts of you doing that. It's complicated, you know. On breath work, I mean, here like a masculine approach versus a feminine approach would be, and by I mean cognitively masculine and cognitively feminine approach would be, and I think this is how you think about breath work, you're thinking about the mechanics of it, the structure of it, you're testing the timings of it, you have gadgets for testing it and stuff. Yours is like there's an external set of events currently happening. Yeah. You want to interfere with and change for the better based on these certain rules you have and certain goals you're aiming at. That's how you're approaching it.
Yes.
A feminine approach isn't that. It's feel and sense the sensations of breathing as you breathe. Do you know what I mean? It's totally subjective.
Or hyperventilate for 3 hours so you feel good. Yeah, totally. It's really ridiculous.
Do you know what I mean? So it sounds like they're doing the same thing, but the approach can be completely different. Yeah. And you can have people in the same room taught by the same teacher who are doing it in completely different ways. And I suspect that's true at meditation retreats. One person, and it's going to be more often women for complex reasons, but it's going to be more often women that are really heavily psychologizing themselves and try to do a therapy session when they're sitting down rather than actually doing the practice.
How do I feel more love?
That kind of stuff. Well, she's probably not thinking that when you're sitting across from her. She's probably thinking, I hope he doesn't speak to me last time. But at least that's more practical. You know, that's out in the world. So a lot of it also is the people who are outside oriented and people who are inside oriented, you know, whether you go inside for the truth or whether you look outside for the truth. Like, I mean, in that sense, I mean, looking outside for facts and the relationship between things in the world. Whereas the other approach would be to look outside to see what other people think or feel. You know, it's not that really hard to talk about this stuff, especially when you're not an expert in it or I haven't written about it, so I haven't really clarified a lot of it. So some of this I'll have come across wrong. Some of this I've missed things out. Some of this will sound either stupid or incomplete or biased, or I sound like I'm some kind of extremist maniac. But really, I'm just describing things I've seen.
Yeah. No, I mean it's hard to talk about because there's a lot of different things working at once, right? So it's not everyone's a little bit different, so it's not an easy subject to discuss. But I think that once you bring it back to bare bones, so you could cast off feminine and masculine even. And we could just look again at how the brain works, which is pretty well known now, right? I mean, you don't even. Oh yeah,
if you go back to there's that Baron Cohen and the guy who's got the same name as Borat, the actor.
Really?
He's a neurologist. He's got a book about
Baron
male,
Cohen.
female.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, he's got difference between male, female brain differences, and the difference. He has a model for the difference between for the male, female brain differences, and his basic idea is the male brain is a systematizing brain and the female brain is a empathizing brain in general.
Right.
You know, there's like a scale, and women are more on that side of the distribution and men on the other. On the extreme systemizing side, you have scientists, engineers, and then the extreme, you have autists, actual autists.
Right.
And the extreme on the empathizing side, you'll have like the women who have the emotional disorders, you know. Right. So those are like the extreme female brain, extreme masculine brain. Right. And obviously most people are kind of somewhere in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
So if you bring it down to that, everything I've said fits into that. The whole culture of the mind-body processes is overly empathizing style. I'm saying for some people, for many people, especially men, but not just men, definitely not just men, a more masculine approach is better, and we're missing things by not having that, and it's causing problems by not having that. And people aren't even conscious of it. They don't even realize there's two different ways of doing these things. They just think that's it. They think mind, body. So if I say, when I called my psychophysical, and I asked a few people what they think it means, and almost every single person today is surprised when I say psychophysical includes thinking, reasoning, and those things, as well as all the rest of it. Because for them, psychophysical, they just assume it means being aware of your sensations and feelings of your body as you're moving or as you're staying still, something like that. It's just focusing on lower levels of your sensing and feeling, basically. To me, that's just one tool among many. That's not, you can't be psychophysical if you throw out the mind. That's maybe.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
I'm not an extreme systematizer. I'm not like on the author side of it at all.
Yeah.
So I think I'm more in the middle. So I think I can say this fairly without trying to think everybody's like me, or trying to think being against one side or the other. I don't think I am being. It's just the way it is. But there's something so seductive about mind-body methods that people don't realize this, because you just get pulled in by the immediate sensation. Oh, that's interesting. That's a feeling. What's that mean? And now you're off. You're like in that now. You're in a trance. You're seduced for years before you come out. Oh, I've just been chasing good feelings. For 2 hours a day, I've been chasing good feelings and trying to be a bliss state, and actually my life's just crumbled around me outside, and I still can't do anything. I can't do anything. I can watch my sensations in the moment, but I can't actually act in the moment. I can inhibit bad behaviors, but I can't actually do good behaviors, because it's not the same thing. A mistake F.M. Alexander made, by the way. Any Alexander people.
Well, it's a good point. Yeah, they're not the same thing. But the problem I have with it as well is given a lot of this stuff kind of this feminine feeling, rightly, as we've been discussing, and it also means that people who probably could benefit from a disciplined approach to many of these things, like particularly young men, never even look at it, because they're just like, well, that's what liberal awfuls, isn't that what they call young affluent? Anyway, not going to go there. But they don't even look at it, because they just instantly, quite rightly, they think that it's just feminine and pathetic. And
so they run to the gyms and the no pain, no gain. It is a shame. That's one of my reasons for even talking about this stuff, is because they're missing out on it. And the alternative, overly masculine approach, I would call it, the hardcore no pain, no gain and all that stuff, it has its own set of problems that later causes some of those guys, as they get older, to then go and seek out mind-body practices as a solution, but then they just do another thing with it's too far one way,
the other way. Yeah.
For me, it's integrating all of these things together. It's not, and it all comes down to, it's the leading edge is conscious control of your movements, even if it doesn't feel right. Everything boils down to that. Everything. Self-discipline is that. That's what it is. It's making yourself do something you didn't want to do, you don't feel like doing. Courage is that. Not reacting to some prick on the internet is that. Yeah. Being good at chatting up a person in a bar is that. It's like all of these, everything important for humans. Making complicated tools without either injuring yourself or making it the way you want to make it, acting on a plan is that. Conscious control of your movements, regardless of how you happen to feel at the time. Everything good about humans, everything that made humans smart and evolve and thrive, is based on conscious control. Is the leading edge of it is now, especially, is the conscious control of your movements and actions, regardless of how you happen to be feeling at the time, in order to achieve a goal. And all of modern Western, all of mind-body practices in the West currently are against that. They work against it, whether consciously or unconsciously. They're against that active, conscious agency in people. They're just, let it all happen, don't worry about it, it'll happen by itself. Trust your feelings and all that stuff. It's anti-evolution,
and also, I might just throw in just something to upend this discussion, but maybe a little bit of mystical experience and a little bit of nice feelings is not a bad thing either. So I don't think you need to be an automaton about it, do you? I mean, if you want a little bit of awakening, I think that's okay if you want.
Well, I've just been stuffing my face with a packet of Haribo gummy bears. So, because I like I don't not only like the taste and the sugar rush, I like the sensation of the feelings in my mouth. Right. So, I'm like as bad as anyone else for all these things. In fact, half the reason I'm even saying this stuff is because I'm terrible at this stuff, chasing
you know
historically.
what to do wrong.
Much worse. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not judging people. I am judging people, but I'm including myself in the judgment. So
sure. Likewise.
I'm bringing everything together. There's my feminine approach. I'm bringing this all together as
your
sensation addict.
Stress eating a bucket of ice cream and giving advice. Yeah.
I'm not stressed when I have ice cream. I'm very calm.
Yeah.
Anyway, I live in a hot country. I have to eat ice cream. With no
likewise. Likewise, a good excuse. Yeah, I think that even in the awakening experience, even that has very little to do with emotions in the ones that I've had. So even that, if people are doing mind-body work to try and access some experience like that, even that you need to be a little bit careful, because you can easily go awry if you view it through an emotional, getting in touch with emotions kind of frame of mind. Maybe they have something to do with the energies and the sensations in the body, various things like that, depending on what it is we're talking about. But for example, Buddhist awakening, it doesn't really have anything to do with empathy or being nice or having emotions or anything like that. It's really got nothing to do with it. And I would imagine it's the same in other mystical traditions where there is some sort of mind state that you're trying to induce. Again, I think these things result from the discipline, the conscious controlled discipline, and then maybe you'll get an experience that just kind of wells up one day. But yeah, the searching for the experience through the frame of emotions is another misnomer that I see many people fall prey to, frankly.
Yeah, the feelings and the bliss states, that they're effects, not the tool. People try to use the feeling as the tool. They try to find that good feeling again. It's like they're using it as a tool, and then they do something, and then the result, and then they judge the result based on whether it feels good or feels bad. So they're using the feeling as a tool twice. They're using the feeling to guide their actions, and then they're using the feeling to judge their actions. When actually, you should be a lot of these things. You should be using your reason to judge your action. Reason, and then an experiment. You do something, and then you see what happens, and then you change your reasoning, or deepen your reasoning, or however you want to describe it. I mean, reason is just a tool. It's not true. It's just a tool for figuring things out in the world, making your actions better. I'm quite materialist isn't the right word about this, but I'm quite physicalist even about that kind of stuff. Like that's why upward thinking is very in the world for me. It's not standing outside and knowing the truth and then applying it to the world. It's not that. It's in here grappling, and it's messy, and you can pull out of it. And if your behaviors are more true, then things will work better for you. Generally speaking, but even that you can't be sure about it.
Yeah.
Depends. Yeah. Maybe we should call this episode "Being Enlightened Feels Like Shit." We're sick of enlightenment. We're sick of being enlightened.
Let me
people calm down.
I can do that. So being enlightened.
He says not only does he hate women, but he says he's enlightened as well.
Both of those things are true.
Luckily, we don't have enough listeners to get nasty comments. Our dozen listeners love us, as we call them. They're probably a lot more extreme views than anything we've said.
The more we hide, the more disservice that is to the world. Because this is a shared life experience. What would our life be without our connections and being with the trees and the plants and the animals and the people that we adore and our families and a chosen family and the answer is it's nothing without that.